There is a wound that has been traveling with you across more lifetimes than you are currently able to remember. You will recognize it not by its name, but by its signature. The almost but not quite feeling that lives at the center of your closest relationships. The sense that love is always somehow just slightly beyond full reach. That the version of you who can be completely seen, completely held, completely received by another person is perpetually one more healing away. You have been working on this for a long time, and it has not resolved, not because you have failed, but because you have been working on it with the wrong tools entirely. I am Lady Nada, master of the sixth ray, the ray of peace, ministration, and the specific quality of divine love that does not demand, does not perform, and does not place conditions on its own presence. I have been assigned to work with souls carrying this particular wound across the arc of their incarnations, not because it is the most dramatic wound a soul can carry, but because it is among the most persistent and among the most misunderstood wounds in the current human experience. Most of you have tried to heal this wound sincerely, consistently, with real investment of time and energy and courage. You have done the therapy. You have done the inner child work. You have set the boundaries, spoken the affirmations, released the relationships that were not serving you, and chosen again and again to keep opening even when opening cost you. And the wound is still there. What I am here to tell you today is why. And more importantly, what actually works instead. Stay with every word of what follows. What I am about to share has not been transmitted in this form before, and it changes the entire framework through which you have been attempting to heal. Let us begin with what this wound actually is, because most of you have been treating a symptom while the root has remained untouched. The wound I am describing is not a wound of abandonment in the way your psychological frameworks typically define it. It is not simply the result of a parent who was unavailable, or a childhood that lacked consistent safety, or a series of relationships in this lifetime that confirmed an early belief that love is unreliable. Their impact is real. But they are not the origin. The origin is older. The wound that keeps you from receiving love fully is a soul-level pattern, a decision made at a specific point in your soul's journey across incarnations to prioritize self-sufficiency over receptivity as the primary survival strategy. It was a wise decision when it was made. It was made in response to a real experience, an experience in which opening fully, trusting fully, receiving fully led to a loss so significant that the soul determined it could not afford to be that vulnerable again. The specific circumstances vary from soul to soul. For some, it was the loss of a child. For some, the betrayal of a deeply trusted bond. For some, the systematic dismantling of an entire life built around a love that proved not to be what it appeared. For some, it was something quieter, but equally foundational, the gradual, undeniable recognition that the person they had organized their existence around did not actually see them. Whatever the specific form, the decision that followed was the same. I will not need that much from anyone again. I will be sufficient unto myself. I will give, fully, generously, with my whole self, but I will not require receiving in return. Because requiring receiving means being vulnerable to not receiving. And that is a pain I will not survive a second time. That decision protected you. In the lifetime in which it was made, it was not only rational, it was necessary. It allowed you to continue, to rebuild, to function in a world that had just demonstrated, in the most visceral possible way, that full openness carried mortal risk. The soul is extraordinarily intelligent. It does not make decisions like this arbitrarily. It makes them in response to real evidence, with the full intention of protecting the organism it inhabits from a repeat of an experience that was genuinely unbearable. The problem is not that the decision was wrong. The problem is that the decision did not expire. Soul-level decisions of this magnitude, decisions made in response to experiences of that level of intensity, do not dissolve at the end of the lifetime in which they were made. They encode into the soul's operating architecture. They become, over subsequent incarnations, not a conscious choice, but a structural feature of how the soul moves through relationship. And so you arrive in this lifetime already carrying it. Not as a memory, you do not remember the original experience. In most cases, the soul compassionately obscures it to allow the new incarnation to begin without the full weight of that grief. You carry it as a pattern, as a reflexive contraction that occurs at a specific threshold of intimacy, a threshold that is different for everyone, but that has one consistent feature. It activates just before full receiving becomes possible. You can get close. You can love deeply. You can give generously and be present and create genuine connection. But at a certain point, the point at which another person moves toward receiving you fully, seeing you completely, loving you without the buffer of partial distance, something in you closes, not dramatically, not in a way that is obvious even to yourself. A slight withdrawal, a subtle shift into self-sufficiency, a quiet internal movement away from the place where you could be fully held, back to the place where you are fully capable. And here is what makes this wound different from every other wound you have worked on, and why the approach that resolves it is completely unlike anything you have tried before. This is the part that changes everything. Stay with me. Most of you have recognized this pattern in yourselves. You have named it. You have traced it back through your relationships in this lifetime. You have done substantial and genuine healing work around it, and you have noticed that the healing work changes the surface expression of the pattern. You get closer to receiving than you did before. You stay open longer, you catch the contraction earlier, but it does not reach the root, because the root is not in this lifetime. The therapeutic frameworks available to you in your current culture are exquisitely designed for wounds that originate in this lifetime. They can trace the pattern back through your childhood, your family system, your attachment history, and do real and meaningful work with all of that. But they cannot reach a decision made 3 lifetimes ago, not because they are inadequate, because they were built for a different depth of excavation. The 6th ray works at the depth where the original decision lives, not by forcing the decision to reverse. The soul's protective intelligence is not something to be overridden. It is something to be engaged with, respected, and ultimately updated with new information. But by doing something more precise, by returning to the soul-level architecture where the decision is encoded, and introducing the one piece of information the soul did not have available when it made the original choice. That information is this: the experience that generated the wound, the loss, the betrayal, the dismantling was not evidence that full receiving is dangerous. It was evidence that full receiving in a field that was not yet coherent enough to hold it creates an unbearable rupture. The danger was never in the receiving. The danger was in the mismatch between the depth of your openness and the capacity of the field around you to meet it. And that mismatch is no longer present. Not because you have finally found the right person, or done enough healing, or become sufficiently worthy of being fully received, but because the energetic field of your planet has changed, is changing, actively, right now, in ways that are making coherent, sustainable, fully mutual receiving possible, in a way it has not been for a very long time. The soul's original assessment was accurate for the conditions that existed. When it was made, those conditions no longer exist. But understanding this intellectually, and I can see that some of you already feel the truth of it landing, is not the same as the wound actually releasing. The specific mechanism by which the sixth ray works at this level is still ahead, and it is unlike anything you have encountered before. Do not leave now. Let us talk about why the tools you have been using have not reached the root, because this is not a criticism of the work you have done. The work you have done has been real, and it has produced real results. You are not the same person you were 5 years ago in relationship. The pattern has softened. The contractions come less frequently, last less time, carry less shame when they arrive. But the root is still there, and understanding precisely why the available tools cannot reach it is what allows you to stop blaming yourself for the fact that they have not. The first category of tools is psychological, therapy, inner child work, attachment healing, somatic processing, parts work, relational repair. These are among the most powerful tools your civilization has developed for working with the human psyche, and they are genuinely effective at what they are designed to do. What they are designed to do is work with a layer of experience that is accessible to your conscious and subconscious mind within this lifetime. They can help you trace the pattern back to its earliest expression in this life, the moment in childhood when the contraction first became a strategy, the relational experiences that confirmed and reinforced it, the specific flavors of unavailability or loss that became the template through which you interpret intimacy. That work matters. It genuinely reduces the surface charge of the wound. But the soul-level decision that underlies all of those experiences is not accessible through those tools, because it predates this lifetime by multiple incarnations. The psychological frameworks available to you are working with great skill and care on the branches of a tree whose roots are in soil they cannot reach. The second category of tools is energetic, Reiki, sound healing, breath work, plant medicine, energy clearing, frequency work of various kinds. These work at a deeper layer than the psychological. They access the body's energy field directly, bypassing the conscious mind and working with the stored charge in the tissues. And the auric layers. These tools can and do produce profound shifts. Many of you have experienced moments of genuine release through these modalities, moments where something old and heavy lifted, where the body softened in a way it had not softened before, where a quality of openness became available that had been closed for as long. as you could remember. But those openings, for most of you, did not hold. Not because the healing was not real, because it was occurring at a layer above where the original decision is. The energy body has layers. What most energetic healing modalities access is the emotional and mental layers of the auric field, the layers that carry the charge of this lifetime's experiences. They can clear that charge beautifully and effectively, but the soul-level decision is encoded deeper in what your traditions have called the causal body, the layer of the energy field that carries the accumulated architecture of the soul's decisions across incarnations. Most energetic healing tools were not designed to work at that depth. Some can touch it. Very few can work with it precisely enough to update a decision of this magnitude without creating destabilization elsewhere in the field. The third category of tools is spiritual: prayer, surrender, devotional practice, forgiveness work, the cultivation of trust in a higher intelligence that is organizing your experience for your highest good. These work at the correct depth. They are pointing in the right direction. But for most of you, they have a specific limitation that is not a failure of faith. It is a structural feature of the wound itself. The wound that prevents full receiving does not only prevent receiving from other people, it prevents receiving from the divine. The same contraction that closes at the threshold of full human intimacy also closes quietly, automatically, beneath conscious awareness. At the threshold of full spiritual receptivity, you can pray, you can surrender in concept, you can cultivate genuine devotion and genuine trust. But at the moment when the divine moves toward meeting you fully, when grace moves toward landing in your field completely, the same ancient protective intelligence that closes before full human, receiving also closes before full divine receiving. This is why spiritual practice alone, for those carrying this wound, produces genuine peace and genuine expansion, but rarely produces the specific experience of being fully, completely, overwhelmingly received by love itself. The wound is in the way at every level, and this is precisely the point at which most transmissions on this subject stop, because what comes next requires a precision of understanding that most frameworks do not have available. I am going to give you that precision now. Stay with me. The sixth ray does not work by adding something new to your field. It works by removing an obstruction that has been present for so long you have mistaken it for a feature of your personality rather than a wound in your architecture. Let me be specific about what that obstruction is. When the soul made the original decision, I will not need that much from anyone again. It did not simply decide to receive less. It redirected the energy that had been available for receiving and assigned it to a different function. That energy became the extraordinary capacity for giving that. Most of you, carrying this wound, have developed to a remarkable degree. You give generously. You give skillfully. You give in ways that genuinely help people, that create real connection, that make others feel seen and held and supported. Your capacity for care and presence and attentiveness to the needs of others is, in many cases, genuinely extraordinary. And it is, in part, a redirection of the energy that was originally designed for receiving. The giving feels safe. The giving is within your control. The giving does not require you to be vulnerable in the specific way that receiving requires, the way that requires you to be still, to allow, to trust that what is moving toward you will not destroy you when it arrives. This is why the wound cannot be healed by working on the receiving directly. You cannot simply decide to receive more. You cannot affirmation your way into receptivity. You cannot will yourself to stay open past the threshold where the contraction activates, because the contraction is not a conscious choice. It is an automatic protective response, operating below the level where conscious intention has jurisdiction. What you can do, what the sixth ray makes possible, is work with the original decision at the level where it lives, not by overriding it, not by forcing the protective intelligence to stand down before it is ready, by updating it, by bringing to the level of the causal body the one piece of information the soul did not have when the original decision was made, that the conditions that made the decision necessary no longer exist, that the field is now coherent enough to hold full receiving without rupture, that what moves toward you now, in your relationships, in your spiritual life, in the transmission of grace itself, is not the same quality of force that caused the original wound. The soul's protective intelligence, when it receives that update at the correct depth, does not resist releasing the decision. It releases it with relief because it has been working very hard for a very long time to maintain a protection that the soul, at its deepest level, has been ready to release for longer than this lifetime. The three specific practices of the sixth ray that allow this update to reach the causal body, that allow the soul's protective intelligence to receive the new information and begin releasing the decision. Arrive now. This is the practical heart of this transmission. Do not leave before you receive it. I am going to give you 3 practices. Each one works at a different layer of the wound. Together, they create the conditions in which the sixth ray can reach the causal body and begin the process of updating the original decision. This process does not complete in a single session. The soul's architecture does not reorganize overnight, but it begins. And once it begins, it tends to continue because the soul has been ready for this release far longer than you're conscious. Mind has been aware. Practice 1, the receiving inventory. This practice is done once in writing, and it is more precise than it may initially appear. Take a sheet of paper, physical paper, not a screen, and divide it into 2 columns. In the left column, write everything you gave in your 3 most significant relationships. Not a comprehensive list, the first things that come without effort. What you offered, what you provided, what you showed up with consistently. In the right column, write what you received in those same relationships. Most of you will find, without needing to think about it carefully, that the left column is considerably longer than the right. Do not analyze this. Do not judge it. Do not begin constructing an explanation for why the imbalance existed or whose fault it was. Simply look at it, hold the paper, and look at the imbalance for 60 seconds without doing anything with it. What you are doing in those 60 seconds is showing the soul level architecture, something it has not been shown directly before, the visible, concrete evidence of what the original decision has cost you in this lifetime, not as an intellectual understanding. You already have that, but as a direct perception held in the body without defense or explanation or reframe. The soul's protective intelligence, when it sees this clearly and without the buffer of rationalization, receives the first piece of the update. The protection has a price. The price is real, and the soul, at its deepest level, is beginning to ask whether the price is still worth paying. Practice 2. The 6th ray invocation. This practice is done daily for 7 consecutive days, at any time, but preferably in the morning, before the day's demands have engaged your attention fully. Sit comfortably. Place both hands open in your lap, palms facing upward. This is not a symbolic gesture. It is a physical signal to your nervous system and your energy field that the receiving posture is active. Palms down is the posture of giving and managing. Palms up is the posture of receiving. The body responds to this distinction at a level below conscious awareness. Breathe 3 times, slowly. Then speak inwardly or aloud if you are alone the following invocation. Speak it slowly, with pauses between each line, allowing each phrase to land before moving to the next. Lady Nada. I call upon the 6th ray. I am willing to be received. I am willing to be seen completely. I am willing to allow love to reach the parts of me that have been protected. I release, to the degree I am able today, the decision to need less. I am open to receiving in the measure that is safe for my soul in this moment. The final line is critical. You are not asking yourself to release the protection entirely and immediately. That would trigger the protective intelligence to contract further. You are asking for the degree of release that is genuinely available today. That qualifier, in the measure that is safe for my soul in this moment, is what allows the causal body to respond without triggering the automatic contraction. Over 7 days, the degree of release that is available tends to expand naturally without force, as the soul's protective intelligence accumulates evidence that the new conditions are real and stable. Practice 3. The reception pause. This practice is done in real time, in the moments when receiving is actually available to you. And those moments are more frequent than you currently notice, because the pattern of self-sufficiency tends to make them invisible. For the next 7 days, when someone offers you something, a compliment, an act of care, an expression of appreciation, an offer of help, a moment of genuine attention, pause before responding. Not a long pause, 3 seconds. In those 3 seconds, notice the automatic response that arises. It will almost certainly be some version of deflection, minimizing the compliment, redirecting the appreciation back toward the giver, declining the help, moving immediately into reciprocity rather than allowing yourself to simply receive. Notice it. Do not act on it immediately. Then, before the automatic response, place one hand briefly on your heart, even if the gesture is invisible to the other person, and allow what is being offered to land for 1 full second before you. Respond. 1 second of genuine receiving before the deflection. That is the entire practice. It sounds almost insultingly simple. It is not simple for those carrying this wound. Allowing something offered with genuine care to land for one undefended second. Before responding is among the most challenging things you will do in a day. But it is precisely at that threshold, the threshold between the offering and the automatic deflection, that the sixth ray can enter and begin its work. Every time you create that 1 second pause, you are giving the soul's protective intelligence new evidence that receiving did not destroy you. Evidence that the field is coherent enough to hold what was offered. Evidence that the update is safe to integrate. 3 practices: receiving inventory once, sixth ray invocation daily for 7 days. Reception, pause in every moment of offered receiving for 7 days. The wound will not be gone in 7 days, but in 7 days, you will feel in your body, not just in your understanding, that something at the root has shifted, something old and heavy that you have been carrying for longer than this. Lifetime will have moved, not completely, but unmistakably. There is one final piece of this transmission, the piece that reframes the entire wound and makes it possible to hold it with something other than the grief you have been carrying about it. It arrives now. Here is what I have not told you yet. The wound that has been traveling with you, the decision to need less, to give more than you receive, to close at the threshold of full receiving, was not a failure of love. It was love. Specifically, it was love directed inward, toward the part of you that had just survived something unbearable, in the only form that part of you could accept at that moment. You could not receive love from outside. The field was not safe. The capacity for trust had been dismantled by an experience that proved, in the most visceral way possible, that full openness carried mortal risk. So the soul did the only thing available to it. It loved itself by deciding to need less. It protected the most vulnerable part of itself, the part capable of full receiving, full opening, full trust. By wrapping it in self-sufficiency and carrying it forward through lifetimes, until the conditions existed in which it could safely emerge. That is not a wound in the ordinary sense. That is extraordinary intelligence. That is a soul that refused to let its own capacity for love be destroyed by an experience that could have destroyed it. And now, right now, in this lifetime, on this planet, in this specific window of energetic transformation that is unlike anything your soul has moved through in its entire arc of incarnations. The conditions exist. The field is coherent enough. The capacity that has been protected across lifetimes is not damaged. It has been waiting, perfectly preserved, ready to emerge the moment you give it permission. And you are giving it permission right now. The version of you that can be fully seen, fully held, fully received by love. In your relationships, in your spiritual life, in your own relationship with yourself, is not one more healing away. It was never damaged. It was protected, and the protection is ready to release. Not because you have finally done enough work, or become sufficiently worthy, or healed the right things in the right order, but because the soul that made the original decision is wise enough to recognize when the conditions that made the decision necessary have changed. You are not someone who cannot receive love. You are someone who has been extraordinarily careful with their own capacity for love, who carried it across lifetimes, intact, waiting for a field coherent enough to hold it without rupture. That field is here. You are standing in it, right now. The sixth ray does not give you something you were missing. It returns to you something you never lost. You have always been capable of this. The wound was never who you are. It was what you did to survive, until now. And now is when the surviving ends, and the receiving begins. If this transmission reached the part of you that recognizes what I have been, describing, not as a concept, but as a lived experience you have been inside of for longer, then you can remember there is another one waiting for you. It is from Saint Germain, and it is about a different wound that travels with souls of your vibrational frequency, the war you have been waging against yourself that the violet flame was specifically designed to end. It is the natural continuation of what you received today. Click it now. And if you have not yet subscribed, do it now, so the next transmission from the Ascended Masters reaches you the moment it is released.